Let me tell you guys a little story. And I know how much you guys love a good story, so here is another one. You may remember a number of weeks ago, this probably would have been, that there was urgent cause for concern about Reform UK leader Nigel Farage and how evidence emerged that he was doing the Nazi salute back during the mid 1970s. And despite the fact that this has been public knowledge for years, there was now growing cause for concern because for some reason, and I don't know whether it was just the practice of impertinent journalism, or whether or not this is leading to something that is going to stick. However, it should. I think in cases like this, it shouldn't be a case where whether it would stick or not, because it happened and because we've seen it happen. And well, even though that's only the tip of the iceberg of the other things that Nigel Farage has done or been implicated, or even the things that we know secretly the motives behind his decision making. But the point was is that he apparently was doing some sort of interview. I don't know exactly if it was on LBC or something like that. However, the point was is that he was brought the case about the salute was brought up to him. Nigel's response, and I'm just going to lay this out on the line, ladies and gentlemen, when I say, when it comes to my understanding of politics, maybe more than government policy, maybe more than result, maybe more than the conception as to why policies or why certain decisions or acts appeal to me or the sort of people they would appeal to. Regardless of all that, I think what Nigel Farage did next best solidifies, in my mind, why I would never, and I mean never, vote for men like him. Nigel Farage, instead of explaining anything about it, seemed to spend the whole time downplaying the situation by saying, well, the BBC, they were making money off the backs of people doing these racist things. So why am I being held accountable to all this? You know what, the BBC should absolutely they should be put in front of all this. They're the ones who should be put it. So I'll save you the impression for 1 second and just basically leave it with this. His response was not to explain his actions. His response was not to apologize for his actions. His response, and you may have heard me say this one before, but I'll say it again anyway. His response was to point in the other direction. His response is an age-old political maneuver, colloquially known as "look over there." I've seen this song and dance being done many, many times. And this is a response that isn't just secluded to politicians. When Bonnie Blue returned to the UK after the fear of nearly being imprisoned in Bali for 15 years, the actual result was that I think she had to pay an undisclosed fine and she was banned from Bali for 10 years. It was either that or she was going to be facing 15 years in prison. Anyway, the point was is that she gets back, and there has been no news whatsoever about reconciling for anything she's done. In fact, the very first thing she did was that she stands alongside Reform UK and Nigel Farage by claiming that there's too many people in this country. Considering Bonnie Blue's track record, you would have thought she would have enjoyed the prospect of more people to exploit. But maybe that's just the way it is. What I'm trying to get... Now, outside of Bonnie Blue's response and aligning yourself with Farage for reasons I'll get to in a moment, for those who can understand where I'm going with this, let me just give you another example. XQC during the whole fiasco regarding Iron Mouse and several other VTubers at the streaming awards, including 2 others and Shroud and whatnot, even though, to my understanding, XQC almost apologized by claiming that VTubers are sad, and Well, basically, he trundles on, and he doesn't really apologize for any of the things he said, or the implications of the things he caused. But then again, when I stopped watching XQC about 5.5 years ago, I must be honest. If you were to tell me he was exactly the same man as he was 5.5 years ago, roundabout, because I stopped watching him just at the point where he was doing his Among Us streams, and I've seen enough clips of him playing Among Us. To be honest, that just about was all I needed to hear. I wish I didn't hear any of it, to be honest, but that's just the way it is. So what I'm trying to get at in the middle of all of this is 3 examples just on the top of my head of people not really taking any sort of accountability, any sort of responsibility, and in fact almost adamantly refuse to apologize, to say sorry, to reconcile, because I think deep down inside, at least these 3 people, I don't think they particularly see that they've done anything wrong at all. And that's a bit of a concerning thing, honestly, just with the way I live my life, and like the code of ethics, if you will, that I've adopted, which is accountability and responsibility. AKA, and this has happened to me like at several jobs I've done in the past, is that, you know what, you apologize and you make amends when things do go wrong and you know it's your fault. There is no point in dragging things out any further. If you are responsible for what you've done, you pay the consequences for the choices you make. And I don't really think that's a bad code to live by. And being responsible means it means in my estimation, you are responsible enough to care about what you're doing. Because when you don't care about what you're doing, you seem to think that you could just let loose, do whatever you want. Because personally, I think right now, people like XQC, Bonnie Blue, and Nigel Farage, they are all just malicious. Deep down inside, I know that they know it's not right for them to do any of the things that they've done. And to be honest, I don't think they care either way. Because as long as they get away with it, that is literally all that matters. And if I'm being honest, it's this sort of I'm very familiar with this song and dance. I've seen it done far too many times in my life. That's probably why I don't be like any of those 3 people, because quite frankly, I just look at it and it's quite sad and pathetic. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is that if I am going to be starting 2026 almost born again as a completely new man, if you will, Novio Homos, I think it's called, something in ancient Roman, something like that. It means having to live by a set of morals that personally I think work, and personally I think are more than what is needed in this day and age, especially from people who would like you to believe that there's no such thing as core morals or values. I know it's not necessarily the case, but there's plenty of people who would rather you think that those sorts of things don't matter. Well, I personally think they do matter, and I think there's quite a lot of people who know that these sorts of things do matter, and that's just the way it is. So I'm not prepared for one instance to start standing by people who think they can just do whatever they want, hurt anyone they want, and feel as though they can just roll over and play dead the second when, things come full circle and they start to reap what they sow. I'm just saying, these sorts of things do come back to haunt people. Time catches up with everybody. But, yeah. I know.